Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast. Fortunate enough to be partnered with BetMGM. That's Tony Altimore. We're going to get to Tony there in just a second. But first, with BetMGM, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code PHNX. There's a few different offers depending on where you live. But for our Arizona audience, you will get up to $100 in bonus bets on your first wager with BetMGM. Again, make sure you use bonus code PHNX. All kinds of good stuff right now going on. You can get Knockout Nights Cornhole League at BetMGM. All kinds of stuff. Now check out the show notes for full details, and let's hear Shane with the disclaimer.
Disclaimer, 21 plus to wager. Visit BetMGM.com for terms and conditions. U.S. promotional offers not available in Washington, D.C., Mississippi, Nevada, New York, and Ontario. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Colorado, D.C., Illinois, Indiana, Louisiana, Maryland, Mississippi, New Jersey, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Virginia, West Virginia, Wyoming. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369, New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP, Arizona. 1-800-522-4700, Kansas, Nevada. 1-800-327-5050, Massachusetts. 1-800-BETS-OFF, Iowa. 1-800-270-7117 for confidential help, Michigan.
All right, now joined by Tony Altimore right there. Tony, first of all, fill people in a little bit on just who Tony Altimore is right there.
Sure. So in my regular work, I do strategy consulting work, mostly for companies, large nonprofits, stuff like that. When all this realignment stuff started happening, I started talking with some media members and trying to help them better understand the strategy of what higher education people and the business of sports were doing, because a lot of the sports writers particularly didn't understand it. Right. And so sort of since then I've gone on, I now help co-host a weekly during the season for USC post-game show. I went to USC, I did my graduate school at Penn, and then help with the Voice of College Football channel on a lot of their podcasts.
Okay, very cool. So, originally then, USC then kind of been around the Pac-12, Pac-10 scene for a long time then, fair to say?
Yeah, and I worked I started, I've always loved sports. My dad played football in the Big Ten, so I grew up in a Big Ten family. Right. And then worked in the athletic department at USC, and then do a lot of work with universities and with university students on both working pro bono stuff.
All right, we're gonna pick your brain a lot here on what the future holds for Arizona, what you would do. I'll push back a little bit at times, but first.
And by the way, go Wildcats, because a lot of you guys don't know, but I have a ton of friends from U of A and have loved the Wildcats ever since the USC days.
Absolutely,
always great folks.
All right, now there are some very strong cases to be made for the Pac-12 right here, and we're going to start with those right there first. First, there's no doubt about it, Tony, that it is a significantly better academic conference than the Big 12. I mean, you just go up and down across the board.
This is why you guys joined.
Right, exactly. So you just go up and down across the board. There's no doubt about that. What say you?
So, yeah, absolutely. I mean, so first of all, to be clear, one thing I think is really important to point out is, because we've done a lot of analysis, there are no bad schools in the Power Five. Right. None. They are all outstanding institutions. And there's no bad conference in the Power Five. Right. There's different degrees. And so one of the things that Dr. Schaefer, the sort of legendary president who built you guys into what you are today, really believed was that he needed to anchor Arizona, stick Arizona's anchor into California and the West Coast, and anchor you guys to Cal, Stanford, Washington, and so kind of ride that train into the great success that you guys have had. Right. And you guys have done that. And I mean, you take a look at your school, California is your largest source of students. It's where most of your alumni are, all of that. And one of the things and we talked about this, you probably didn't see it, but on the day out, I think it was the day after, 2 days after USC and UCLA made their move to the Big Ten, we talked to the Voice of College Football channel that the big question is what happens with the rest of California.
Right.
And so one of the caveats I think is really important to say is, as long as the Pac-10 remains sort of intact, and we've been told by the Big Ten people that they are not adding more people for the near future, say, then the Pac-12 is absolutely, I think it's a better place for Arizona. There's no bad place for Arizona, right? Heck, Arizona, Mike and I have talked, Arizona, I think, would be outstanding in the SEC. They'd be outstanding in the Big Ten if the Big Ten could add enough schools. They'd be great in the ACC. There's no bad place for Arizona because you're a great school. You're an AAU school. As Dave talked about, there's no bad place for you guys. But as long as you can keep your wagon hitched to the source of your students, the source of your donors, the source of your money, the source of your academics, the recruiting of faculty, all that stuff. And the PAC has an academic consortium you guys are a huge beneficiary of as far as bringing in academic money to you that's sort of pooled through shared services. Cal is sort of the biggest contributor. You guys in Colorado and Utah are big beneficiaries. The advantages for you are there. You certainly, the question, the sort of big picture question, which is at a million miles above, is making sure, like, okay, there's nothing else is going to disrupt this model that we have now.
Were you surprised when SC and UCLA bolted, or was that something you saw coming?
So I was a little surprised. I was mostly surprised that they did it without Cal and Stanford.
Right.
So I talked, we were on a couple of times on the 365 Sports guys and a couple of times with Voice College Football. And I would have assumed that certainly those four, and I studied under the the old USC president emeritus who passed away, unfortunately. I'll tell you, he would not have let Cal and Stanford out of his sight.
Right.
So I was a little surprised that they went without Cal and Stanford. I was actually on the phone as it was happening, talking to Paul Catalina, and I said, what about Cal and Stanford?
Right.
It became clear, and I think sort of the rumor is it was Fox's call that Fox said, nope, they're not good enough, or for whatever reason they weren't taking it. Mm-hmm. Funny, I found a slide. I said this is really funny, just given the coincidence and the money we're talking about right now. I said for USC and UCLA to leave, they would need $40 million more than the Pac-12 and to bring their friends.
Right.
And I just sort of threw that out there as like, oh, that's a ridiculous number that probably wouldn't. And it's exactly the number that did happen, funny enough.
I think what scares Arizona fans, and obviously we're going to get to all this, is the media deal and what hasn't happened so far. Now, obviously, we've had presidents and athletic directors that have said, we expect something done by this date. It's been pushed back a little bit, et cetera, et cetera. What do you see with a TV deal, and how do you see this unfolding, Tony?
So first of all, I'm not going to say anything that's going to disagree with the Arizona athletic director that you guys heard from on your show in a brilliant interview this week.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I got you.
Because he knows better than any of us.
Right.
He's in those rooms as they're having the conversations. Right. One of the things that I think is a big kind of misunderstanding among sports. So first of all, there's a lot of Big 12 fans that are just like mouth frothing, ravenous with lust because they want to try to like lure some of you guys over. Right. But there's also among a lot of sports fans, I feel like a misunderstanding of the pain in the neck speed of higher education. So in the world of higher education, 12 weeks is like a couple weeks. Right. So if they're like, oh, well, it's a couple more months, you know what? We sent it back for rework. They brought it to us. We want more. And so in the grand scheme of higher education, if all of the presidents are not lying to you, which would seem to be a pretty rational thing to believe. Right. Then... And they're telling you, okay, well, we're fine tuning, we're working. I mean, the Big Ten still hasn't signed their final paperwork, so we know these things like take forever. The Big 12 hasn't signed their thing, and their thing wasn't even a new deal; it's just an extension, and they still haven't finally signed it. So the fact that it's taking a long time and taking longer than fans want is sort of a very artificial, fake thing. That if they're said, oh, it's March and it's May, in higher education, that's not a long time. The big question, I think John Wilner, who is great at this stuff, has put well, as he said, okay, there needs to be more than we know. So do Bobby Robbins and Dave Hickey, do they know what's happening more so than Cyclone Timmy 4242? And as long as they do, and I think it's reasonable to assume that they do, then you would think that the media deal will be fine. It will be good enough. They're telling us it will be good enough. If they don't, then you have an absolute catastrophe. And the thing is, it's not the first time we've had an absolute catastrophe because, for example, in the 1956 mess that blew up the Pacific Coast Conference, 7 of the today's Pac-12 CEOs got fired or forced into retirement. 7 of them.
So it's not without precedent.
Resettled. Right. So there is sort of like one little precedent where, in that case, they were lying about cheating. So it wasn't that they were lying about media deal. They were lying about paying their players in most cases.
I think what terrifies, I think, Arizona, or what, because you and I were talking on the phone yesterday, and you were put it very well when you said the presidents are the ones running this thing. It's Klyakov is, an easy, guy to target right there. But I think what really terrifies, especially Arizona fans, is that these presidents. I mean, now I'm going to give Bobby Robbins a pass because he wasn't involved in that and he likes sports. But Tony, these presidents have rubber stamped Larry Scott for the longest time.
Well, the only ones left. In fact, I think isn't Crow and DiStefano
right
are the only ones left who rubber stamp Larry Scott.
Right.
So what actually happened is, as one by one, as they turned over, and I don't know who your president was. I forget the name during the 2010s. That
we had Ann Hart.
Okay, yeah. So you had her. We had Dr. Nikias, who was so busy raising money, he was paying no attention whatsoever, as well as lots of other. We had lots of other problems at USC. UCLA did nothing, but it wasn't until they got a new breed of presidents in who really took charge and then flushed Larry Scott out.
Now, would you be more would you be as confident as you are now if it was this that old group of presidents?
No, I have no faith in the old group of any way, shape, or form. Okay. The new group who flushed Larry out, thank God for.
Right.
And I understand that they have sort of told Dr. Crow, and I don't know if this is true or not. This is sort of like leaks that seem trustworthy, but not. That they sort of have shamed Dr. Crow a little. I mean, Dr. Crow is a legend. I know you guys, ASU, the big rival, Territorial Cup is ferocious, but like he's sort of like a legend in higher education for great things. Athletic department is probably the worst thing he's done.
Right. But you got to remember, though, from an athletic perspective, and I get it, and we'll get back to academics here in a second. That's what people really, that's what people care about. And I'll put it to you like this. I'm happy that Bobby Robbins, who is, and he got beat up a lot, but I'm happy that Bobby Robbins is a sports fan because
you need that.
When I look at Michael Crow, and again, does a lot of good stuff academically, not going to dismiss that at all. But there have been a lot of precedents over the years that kind of look at athletics like, we got to put up with it, but that's not really our thing. And that's how people like Larry Scott get in there and kind of get rubber stamped like we were just talking about.
Well, and by the way, the Pac-12 was founded by two guys, one of whom is the most famous university president in the history of university presidents, who also invented the whole Carnegie R3 thing. And his quote was, he said, as president of the university, my job is to provide sex for the students, sports for the alumni, and parking for the faculty. And if I do that, I'm good.
Right. Exactly.
And the other one, who was a Nobel Prize winner, discovered 10 elements, ran U.S. nuclear weapons for decades, just one of the most Nobel Prize winner. And his most proud achievement is that as Cal Chancellor, they won the Final Four.
Is it?
You need that balance that you guys have.
No doubt. Do you blame the presidents in the conference for not really knowing that USC and UCLA, your two prized possessions, were planning for quite a while to leave right under your nose?
Well, USC told them in 2019, and the quote was, "All options are on the table." I mean, you can go. USC was public. They said that in interviews. They went on Mike Bone went on podcasts and said all options are on the table. I don't think that they believed that it would happen. And I think that Cal and Stanford did not believe they would be left behind.
Right. So that's
sort of the shocking thing. And quite honestly, from you guys at Arizona's standpoint, if I'm Arizona, my big question, which, Bobby Robbins is Mr. Stanford, right? So Bobby Robbins is more Mr. Stanford than the president of Stanford is.
Right.
So he has obviously connections better than the president of Stanford, who's basically in hiding right now. But he might be the next president of Stanford. We'll see. But the question is, can you trust Stanford and Cal not to stab you in the back? And that's not that they wouldn't stab you in the back, because they probably would stab you in the back to go to the Big Ten. But do you trust that the Big Ten is not taking Stanford and Cal?
What say you?
So, then I would say you're probably in a more trustworthy position.
But isn't it their job, though, these presidents' jobs, to know that, again, because you're right, they were surprised, no doubt about it.
Oh, they were stunned, but they shouldn't have been stunned.
Well, that's what I'm saying. But these are also the same people then that are negotiating the TV deals. Some of these people. Now, again, like you said, there is some new blood for sure. Great point.
Yeah.
But these are also the same people, though, that are now negotiating the TV deal, who were stunned that their flagships both left right under their nose, while you rightly put that USC said all options are on the table.
Well, and part of your problem too is the ultimate backstab, which this has not gotten much attention, and I don't know why it didn't get much attention. The real ultimate backstab was inside the University of California, because the president of the University of California, who was previously the president of Ohio State and the chancellor of UC Irvine before that, the president of the University of California knew about the move and signed off on the move and didn't tell Cal. So they signed off on UCLA and didn't tell Berkeley. And they also told some of the regents and not others. And that's why you had that whole messy regents mess, because like the big backstab wasn't USC being a pain in the neck, whatever, that it's happened.
Right.
And by the way, quitting the conference, a lot of you guys don't know, funny, the LA Times used the same headline in 2022 that they used in 1957 when USC, Cal, and UCLA quit the Pacific Coast Conference.
Right.
But the big backstab was that inside the University of California, as far as USC was concerned, again, they talked about it, the money was there, but I don't think that they all thought they would be left behind.
So with the way that they're backstabbing, though, that doesn't exactly lead to a bunch of confidence, though, as far as going forward as one united unit right there.
Well, but your question is okay. So those folks are gone,
right?
And are you better off almost with them? So one of the things about the Big 12, you look at the Big 12, for example, and I use this example with the ACC too. When you look at what's going on in the Big 12 got rid of their sort of, and they'll call them cancers, they'll call them their malcontents or their problem children, and they're real happy right now. So your question for the Pac-12 would be, okay, now you've gotten rid of your problem child,
right?
Who, by the way, has been your problem child since 1924.
It's been a while for sure.
My beloved alma mater, I will admit, we got kicked out of
it. Be careful right there, Tony.
Yeah, we've been the problem child since 1924. This is not new. So you get, you've gotten rid of that. Is the rest of it stable? And that is, as far as you consider, like these are the presidents, they have the Big Ten relationships. They have the relationships within Fox to know that Fox basically said, we're not going to fund these other schools at the level. Oregon is probably not at the academic level. They're not even close to Arizona's academic level. They're probably not at the academic level for the Big Ten. And so you sort of say, okay, if there's not a place for them to go, that's the best of the situation, because you know that you're pretty solid because they're not going anywhere. They're not going to the Big 12.
Let's talk about them in a second, but got to pay a few bills. Have you ever been to Circle K before, Tony?
I have not.
All right, Circle
Sounds
K.
Like I should go.
Yeah, I was going to say you should go. It's an awesome convenience store right here. Check it out. Make sure you're not missing out on all the great stuff. You can text PHNX to 31310 to join their SMS subscriber club and get a buy one, get one free offer on a 32-ounce Polar Pop. Head to CircleK.com/store locator to find a Circle K near you. And maybe you'll find Tony Altimore there checking it out for the first time. Just saying. Circle K and Tap and Bottle. All the away game watch parties, as you know, are at Tap and Bottle here in Tucson. Love it. Scott and Rebecca do a great job. Check it out downtown or on the north side. Love to see you down there and get some Four Peaks there as well. All right. You mentioned Oregon and Washington. I don't trust them on this. I believe that they both, I'll be honest with you, especially Washington, because they have the kind of athletic and academic footprint that fits in what the Big Ten's looking for. Go ahead.
I said a long time ago, and nobody listened to me when I said this. I said Washington. Okay, I said Washington is exactly the definition of a Big Ten school.
Right.
But we've been told by the Big Ten presidents and through leaks by the Big Ten's money people that the money wasn't there for Washington to be accretive. Now, there's some weird, some folks with like wild sort of, conspiracy ideas, but they're like, okay, well, they could take this money. But the Big Ten people, they also look at the big picture.
Right.
And when you look at the big picture, if they're worth half the money today, they're not going to suddenly, like Washington is a legendary school, legendary program. They're not going to be worth that much more going forward. Like, they have national championships. It's Washington. So as far as like, it's sort of like with the Pac-12, you think like, okay, San Diego State, you look at their viewership now, you say, okay, you know what, they're going to be worth a lot more in the future. Just like I think with the Big 12's ads, Houston and stuff, they're going to be worth a lot more in the future. Washington is already sort of in that upper echelon, so they're not going to be worth that much more in the future. So the question for the Big Ten is, are you going to make a dilutive ad?
Right.
Now, one of the interesting questions, again, with Stanford and Cal, pretty surprising, because if you had asked the Big Ten presidents a decade ago, would you forego a little bit of revenue to add Stanford and Cal? I think the answer would be, like, where do I write the check?
Where do we sign up? Yeah.
Yeah. But apparently we've been told that answer now is no.
Now,
and so that's one of the issues.
The Nebraska chancellor, though, caught my eye, though, last week when he mentioned, though, about and maybe it was a slip, I don't know, but he did put it out there that with the Big Ten, they could be looking to add 2-4 teams, and he was clearly talking about the Pac-12. Was that just him speaking out of reference there, or was that a candid moment?
So I thought he was more talking about the ACC, because he said the Pac-12, they might have changed, but then what he seemed to be talking about for their targets seemed to be in the Southeast. Okay. And if you look at sort of I'm not a TV valuation guy, so I defer to the TV valuation guys. The TV valuation folks have said, so Notre Dame is incredibly accretive to the Big Ten's value. No doubt. Incredibly so. Probably so incredibly so that Notre Dame could probably pick a +1 to join them. Right. Which is
for sure. No doubt.
Yeah, depending on what happened, arguably what may have happened with USC. Florida State or Miami, depending on the math that you look at, may be either also accretive or really close.
Right.
Washington and Oregon are supposedly, we're told, are not. Again, I am all on Team Husky. I don't cheer for the Ducks, but I have a lot of great friends who went there. But as far as the Huskies go, again, I'm surprised that it didn't work, but we're told that the math didn't work. And so that's why people that are like, oh, you don't like it. It's like, guys, it's not my opinion. It's like, this is what the Big Ten presidents have said. We're not going to make a move that is dilutive. Now, there have been some changes in the Big Ten president's world. And the biggest one of all, so Dr. Blank who was the chancellor at Wisconsin, amazing lady, was hired to actually replace my old econ professor, who was the president of Northwestern.
Okay. And
tragically was diagnosed with just a rapid, horrific type of cancer and passed away before she took office at Northwestern. And they went and hired Oregon's president.
Right.
As well as Oregon then went, and is this a coincidence or not, Oregon went and hired Wisconsin's provost.
Right.
Funny enough. So, and you've also had the guy who was at Cincinnati and UBC has taken over in Michigan. The Miss Stanford, which was a varsity field hockey athlete, Rich Inventor, who's the president of Ohio State, has stepped down. So Ohio State is getting a new president. So there are some changes in the Big Ten that hypothetically, could the presidents change their mind and say, we want somebody, we would be willing to take somebody dilutive? I don't think they would, but we have to listen to the president. In that case, we have to listen to the presidents because they're the ones who make the decision.
Right. Let's talk Big 12 here a little bit. So Brett Yormark comes in and he said a couple things. He said he was going to take care of the Oklahoma-Texas situation as quickly as he could. Did that.
Brilliantly did that, by the way.
What's that?
Brilliantly did that.
Yeah, for sure. No doubt. And he said that he would get a TV deal and that everybody would get a raise. Again, like you said, $31.7 million per school, but everybody's locked in right there. And I think what Arizona fans are looking at it, because as well as I do, there's going to be another conference blow up here in the coming 5-6 years. There's going to be another one where we don't even recognize it. The Big 12, though, seems to offer some stability right there that the Pac-12 can't offer right now.
Does it, though? So first of all, let's give kudos to Brett Yormark. So I get sometimes people give me flack because I talk about why his leadership style is very ill-suited for the Pac-12, but It is brilliantly suited for the Big 12. So they lost all, the Pac-12 was found in this. We talked about this a little bit. June 22nd, 1959, the meeting where they cemented the deal to create the Pac-12 was very much on the idea that the presidents run the conference and the presidents speak for their schools, and the conference serves at the pleasure of the presidents. And so Kliakov, is sort of always caught between a rock and a hard place because he's like the manager.
Right.
Whereas Yormark can kind of has the ability to really sort of
Yormark's
be
got the bully pulpit, and he's got everyone behind him, where Kliavkoff is essentially speaking for other people.
Exactly. You don't tell Stanford or Cal or Washington or Arizona or Arizona. You don't speak for Michael. You don't tell Michael Crow what to do. Right. Michael Crow is in charge. Same with Bobby Robbins and Cal and Washington, all those folks. So it's a different mentality, and they needed that because they lost their 6 most prominent founders. Right. They lost 6 of the 12, and they're the 6 of the 12 who ran the show, who bickered, who feuded. And so it left you with the backbench and the new kids. And I think that he has brilliantly done a great job really running that. So the question is there stability? Well, first of all, the stability is locked in with a 99-year membership agreement. Mm-hmm. Right. Which just makes it financially ridiculous to get out of. Now, that's different from the grant of rights. The grant of rights is through, 2031 or something like that, whatever it is. Yeah, but the membership agreement is a 99-year membership agreement. So if you are convinced that you want to be locked in there forever and you want to know that everyone you're locked in with is there forever, it's a great place to be. When you look at uncertainty, and I look at a world of uncertainty, if you're a world-class university who's already in the upper echelons, which is literally the definition of Arizona, I don't know that you want to be locked in for 99 years with Central Florida and Iowa State.
See, to me, to me, it's two different things. There's the academic component, which you and I totally agree on.
Yeah, but I mean, athletically.
But athletically, though, I'm going to challenge you there.
You want to be, and that's and by the way, there's not necessarily a wrong answer to that.
For sure, and that's why this is fun. And by the way, I really appreciate you coming on to talk about this.
It's great to chat about it.
For sure, Arizona basketball is what runs this.
So good.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it is the lifeblood of this city.
That's the dismay of my Trojans, but I love when you beat the Bruins.
Absolutely. I know. We try to do our part right there. But, Tony, that's what people really in this town care about. And when they look at the Big 12, the one thing you can say about the Big 12 is that they have awesome basketball. I mean, 2 of the last 3 national titles have been from there, 6 top 25 teams. The Pac-12 without the LA schools, when it comes to basketball, is essentially the Mountain West.
Now, you're talking about, as a USC grad here, are you talking about is that the Harry Potter thing with the brooms?
A little bit.
I don't know. We don't do this thing. Right. I see people going, no, I'm just kidding.
No,
just
for sure.
No. Well, and here's a question for you guys. And I defer to people on basketball because basketball is a tough thing. Because basketball doesn't move the financial needle.
The way football does, right.
The way football does. However, if you're a basketball school, and I mean, we could look at charts on this, for example, your fundraising, I don't know because I don't know your donors, but how much of your fundraising is facilitated at basketball games versus how much of it is facilitated at football games? Because the $250 million a year that you guys raise matters a whole lot more than any of these TV our little tiddlywinks conversations about TV media rights are nothing compared to the $250 million a year that Arizona is trying to fundraise, and they're using basketball and football to do it. So from that end, there is real, and this applies also to Duke and Carolina and stuff. There's huge financial value to basketball that has nothing to do with media rights, and that's why it's really important for you guys to make sure you get that right.
Well, right, exactly. And that's why I think people are concerned, obviously, about where this media deal is, because Arizona is the only school. Arizona leads the conference every single year in attendance for basketball. When you go to the Pac-12 tournament, it's all Arizona fans.
Yeah, we have dozens of fans in the Galen Center. No, I'm just kidding.
And Tony, I can confirm that I've seen those dozens of fans.
You've seen those dozens of. I'm just kidding. We're going to be good this year. It's going to be fun.
But what people here also, and I'm going to be honest with you, people are also tired, though, of when it's an Arizona UCLA game, it being on a 7:30 or a 9:30 or 8:30 tip when nobody's really watching on like the Pac-12 network or something. Whereas you look over at the Big 12, and if you were to play Kansas, that game's going to be on ESPN. That game's going to be on Fox. The visibility, I think, is very appealing for Arizona fans.
So I have to totally defer to you guys on that because I only watch USC and I don't watch enough of your basketball. But you've
had enough football. You've had enough football success over your life.
We do. That's our game, and baseball also. But I'll tell you another thing. So one of the things that I was very interested in. So I looked very carefully at the idea of Gonzaga. Mm-hmm. And would Gonzaga be good for the Pac-12 or for the Big 12?
Right.
And I couldn't get the math to work, and I couldn't get the strategy to work. I think it's maybe why they haven't joined either one of them.
Right.
But one of the things for Arizona fans to think about, and I know that this is people think about this as the wrong answer. You have an advantage in basketball that's different than football because of your scheduling. And again, Arizona basketball fans, I am not telling you guys what to do with basketball because that is your bread and butter.
Right.
But it might be better. You might be better off as the top dog in the Pac-12 or what Pac-10, whatever it is, because the thing about which is what Gonzaga does in the WCC, because then you can fill in your schedule and pad your schedule and go play North Carolina and play Duke and play Villanova at Madison Square Garden, and do whatever you want to do in addition to scheduling because you have more games to do that. And you might be able to continue reaping the benefits of the Pac-12 and just structure your basketball in a way that gives you that, because it might be kind of nice to have I'll tell you, I look at Arizona basketball and I look at the Pac-12 tournament.
Right.
And then I look at what Gonzaga does with the most rigged nonsense tournament in the world in the WCC. That's like, do they just have it at Gonzaga? They probably should because it's rigged for them. In all honesty, if I was the new Pac-12, I would adopt that sort of scheduling thing for your benefit. If I was in charge of them.
Yeah, no.
But I'm not in charge.
But also, though, I can tell you, what kind of sunglasses you wear, Tony? You strike me as a sunglasses guy.
I wear Ray-Ban, but I'm sure whoever your sponsor is has much better ones I should look at.
Oh, well, Ray-Bans are very, very cool, but I also got to tell you about Shady Rays right here. Now, you might check them out. Now, you might say, Mike Luke, you don't look cool, but you know what would make me look cool? Wearing Shady Rays sunglasses. All right, here's the deal. Shady Rays Memorial Day sale is live right now. Go to shadyrays.com and get 35% off all sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 250,000 people right there. And one other thing, 4 Peaks. We're cool around here, Tony. We have official brew of PHNX Sports.
Nice.
Dude, that's how we roll around here.
Some of the best beer in the country comes from Pac-12 country, including you guys.
It absolutely does. And I'm telling you, 4 Peaks is where it's at. Now, again, it's up in Tempe, but you can get it at the tap and bottle locations. And check out 4 Peaks Brew or 4 Peaks Pub to keep up with the latest on Arizona's hometown brewery. Must be 21 years or older to drink 4 Peaks. Please drink responsibly. All right, let's talk about streaming here. So it looks like it would be the Pac-12 deal would obviously be heavy on streaming. What say you about all that when it comes to the football, basketball part of that?
So first of all, that's 1,000 times better than the Pac-12 network.
We'll agree on that one. We definitely agree on that one.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you, more and more of everything is moving to streaming. A significant portion of the Big 12 stuff is going to be on ESPN Plus. The Big 10 has BTN, which helps. So they have a little more access. But as far as a lot of the streaming component of football, it's better. It's certainly better than the Pac-12 network. I'll tell you, when I look at it and people say, "Oh, what if it was here?" I mean, I have almost all of the things that people are rumored that the stuff is going to be on, and I would take that over a lot of what we have now. It doesn't strike me as a problem because here's the other big debate, and we could talk about this for like a half hour. It'd be fascinating, but like if you think about like two polar opposites. Are you trying to sell a property for the most money possible to a media provider? Right. Or are you trying to get everyone to watch your games? If so, you should give them to PBS for free. Give everybody a tote bag. So, well, I mean, obviously you're trying to be somewhere in the middle. But your question that I sort of hear from a lot of these stands, they're like, "Oh my God, it's this. Oh my God." And it's like, guys, if you really want all the money, if you want to have the dong measuring contest, you need to be bigger than the Big 12 or bigger than the ACC, then you know what? You're going to sell it to Amazon and fewer people are going to see it, but you have sold it for a reason. If you really want to have it somewhere else, then, and there's rumors, and I don't know if they're true or not, that the original sort of like best deal that they presented to the press, again, I wasn't in the room. I can't verify this. The original deal they gave to the presidents was too heavy on streaming, and they were sent back to rework it.
Well, that's exactly what happened. Yeah, because again, for me, I'm fine with streaming as a component, but I believe we're still about 5-6 years away. Now, streaming is the future. There's no doubt about it. And anybody that says it isn't doesn't know what they're talking about.
Yeah.
But there is a reason, though, that all of these conferences, I think, are locked in at least with your traditional cable networks at this point. Whereas if you go majority streaming, you're kind of going into uncharted waters there, Tony.
You are, but I mean, one of the other things is we don't know what the Pac-12 is agreeing to yet.
Right.
And I mean, one of the funny things is, so I don't know if you guys don't know that some of you guys are probably even too young for this. Like the Pac-12 games used to be on USA.
For sure.
And they were on Versa. I mean, so they were all over, and they were fine. I mean, USA was great because like no matter what region you were in, you could watch a Pac-12 game. So as far, I think we kind of have to see, and this is where you guys at Arizona are putting your faith in Bobby Robbins to push what you want.
Right.
And in that regard, you have to sort of wait to act. And but this is not like a fan like popularity vote.
Right.
This is the presidents of the schools that are selling this for money. And so they're the ones who are sort of deciding like what are the parameters of how far I'm willing to go.
What worries me, I think people
nothing can be worse than the Pac-12 network.
For sure. Oh, tell me about it. I think also what worries people though a little bit is it like when all the presidents are saying something, it's kind of like Nick Saban though at some point saying, I have not interviewed with Alabama. I am staying as the coach of the Miami Dolphins. Then 12 hours later, he becomes the Alabama coach. It almost feels like they kind of have to say that at some point.
So, and I guess that depends on your president. I have found that university presidents, unlike sort of like coaches in this regard,
right,
don't lie. Like, for example, I was really curious when you guys had your interview with Dave. Mm-hmm. I was fascinated to see if he was going to sit there and say, well, we have to look at options and we love where we are, but like, you never know. And it's a changing and not instead he sat there and he said, we are proud to be in the Pac-12. We don't want you to misunderstand what we're saying. And I thought, okay, that's not what a actual university executive says if they're on the verge of going somewhere.
This is just me surmising because Dave, and I'm sure you saw the quotes, had put in the alumni magazine that but we are going to have we will have other options and we will land where or
you
strong.
You guys should have all the options in the world,
right?
You're Arizona,
right? For sure. Now let me ask you this, Tony. Is Arizona, no matter where they are, whether it's in the Pac-12 or the Big 12, is their brand from an athletic and academic perspective going to be good, or where do you see Arizona in that regard?
So you guys, and I mean, we could look at a million charts. I posted a ton of them. You guys can take a look at on the computer.
By the way, where can they find you on Tony? Where can they find you on Twitter, Tony?
On Twitter, just at TJ Altimore, like sir. Baltimore with no B.
Baltimore. Right.
Yeah, TJ Altimore. Now, one of the things, this is kind of an interesting thing for you guys, and people have talked about Colorado. Any of you guys, Arizona State, Colorado. When you look at when you average multiple academic rankings, you guys would be the best school in the Big 12.
Right.
Now, U.S. News overweights some of the private schools, some of the other ones overweight research a little bit. But if you average them, and I posted charts on this, you would be the number one school in the Big 12.
The cream of the crop, and it's different. But
you guys do way more research than anybody in the Big 12.
For sure. And while you could look at the U.S. News and World Report where BYU is up there, they're totally different entities. Yes, exactly.
Totally different entities. But so, as far as that goes, one of the questions, and this is sort of the big picture Arizona question, it sort of goes to that, do you want to be the nicest house in a lesser neighborhood, or do you want to be in a better neighborhood?
Right.
Now you guys, when you think about like stuff, and I mean, we could go ad nauseum in this, your fans, by the way, do not like these discussions. But when we think about, what helps you guys attract faculty, what helps you guys bring in the big money, I think you're a lot better off being tied to Cal and Stanford and Washington, provided, and that's the huge asterisk, that you get to stay tied to Cal and Stanford and Washington.
And see, to me, that's the debate where I think a lot of people are missing it right here is that, yes, from an academic perspective, there's no doubt about it.
And from an overall money perspective.
For sure. Now,
if you look at the actual finances, and I mean, if you were like being a very like old school economics 101, valuation person. Like I'm going to what's the smartest academic decision for Arizona? The Pac, you would literally you could pay the Pac-12 for membership and you'd still come out ahead financially.
Right.
Let alone any of the money. But but the reality is, that's sort of like ridiculous microeconomics. But the truth is, the value is massive for you guys financially in the Pac-12, so long as there is not a major disruption that takes away the feeders of those values, which are primarily in Cal and Stanford, and to a lesser extent Washington.
And then there's the academic, or because again, we're in lockstep on the academic, but then from athletic perspective, though, you've still got, the Big 12, like I said, Big 12 is a much better conference when it comes to hoops. They've got with ESPN and Fox, you're already locked in. You know that you're going to get games there. From an athletic perspective, there's a security there, like I said, that the Pac-12 can't exactly offer right now. That's the thing that, that Bobby Robbins knows, right, that we don't. Right. If he doesn't trust Stanford and Cal and Washington to be able to go, again, anybody would go to the Big Ten in a minute. You guys would go to the Big Ten. 100%.
If the Big Ten asked you guys, you would ditch Arizona State and go if you had the chance.
Right.
As far as the Big Ten goes, that's a whole other thing. We are told by the Big Ten they're not taking anybody. They've been pretty clear in trying to telegraph that. At least from the Pac-12, I think they would love Notre Dame and some folks from the Southeast. As far as that bigger picture of security, if you have that security, you're better off maintaining that. The other thing is, you guys are Arizona, so your opportunity to be desirable. Not only do I not think it's going to go away, but I think that as Jedd Fisch brings your football program back to relevancy, I really appreciate the amazing things he did. Your football team was in the depths of nightmares, and he has really rebuilt that program to make it more valuable again. Your viewers, if you look at your TV viewers for Arizona, right, they are atrocious. Nobody watches your games over the past 10 years because you've been so bad. So if you guys can really just keep that going up and keep what you're doing, you, I think, have the potential to get more and more and more and more valuable. And as long as you guys are Arizona and you're the basketball power, you keep getting your football back on track, it's not like you're not going to be attractive in a couple of years. And the idea that, they're going to take Memphis and not you, they're going to take Fresno and not you. No, that's not going to happen.
Well, see, that's the thing, is that the Big 12 is always going to be there for Arizona. I do believe, though, that at some point, though, there does come a time period where there has to be something done. Now, again, I'm not a big guy on, here's a time period, here's a date. But, Tony, at some point, a deal has to be made. It can't just be, a couple months down, a couple months down. At some point, that's got to reach APEC.
So I thought they should have, and this is where, so I used to work years ago for the Central Intelligence Agency, and we have the philosophy of you get it done, right? You find a way to get it done. So as far as I'm stunned that they still haven't gotten it done. Again, assuming the presidents are not all lying to us, and if they are all lying to us, every one of them should be fired like they were in 1957. But it was over 1957 and 1960. Somebody's angrily typing away because of when the Oregon president retired, whatever. The 1957 scandals. But assuming that they are being truthful, assuming that Bobby Robbins and Annamari Cauchi and Carol Christ and Phil DeStefano and all those folks are being truthful to us, which we have we have to kind of assume they are until we see otherwise, then as far as why they're taking so long, it's up to them. I also kind of think, and I could be totally wrong in this, I think there's a little bit of a power game in that a little bit too.
How so?
I think that they do not care what they're. So I've been told they're really, and you talk to Dave, so you know this better. I'm told they're really angry about a lot of the fake stuff that's come out.
Right.
But
they're not doing that. But in all fairness, they're not doing themselves any favors, though.
No favors. They're acting like the NSA.
When Ray Anderson puts out, we're looking at something here, and it's clearly not going to happen. At some 100%. Point, you start looking stupid.
You completely. And not only that, but they needed to be constantly countering. they need to have, because given what the situation that they're in, again, this is what I think they needed to have done. I think they needed to hire a PR firm who was going to fight back with every ounce of nastiness that was getting thrown at them. They, or at least I'm told by people at the schools, they view themselves as above it. And they're trying to take that, like, when they go low, we go high. We are united. And the idea that, because here's the issue, is that what every, Tucson fan 23 thinks on Twitter doesn't matter if Bobby Robbins and Carol Christ are in lockstep.
I think what bothers fans, though, and it's a good point, but I think what bothers fans, though, is kind of the pretentious nature of it all, and that Arizona fans, Pac-12 fans, and like you said, it's different presidents in there, but you've had to sit through a lot of nonsense with Larry Scott, where, I mean, let's be honest here.
Well, let's also remember, too, with Larry Scott, there's almost like two Larry Scotts, right? So, and I don't know how much you've studied about the original business model, the plan for the Pac-12 networks. Mm-hmm. The plan for the Pac-12 networks, very similar to what the Yankees and Mets and Madison Square Garden have done, was kind of a brilliant plan. They just completely bombed on the execution, and then they didn't get the distribution they wanted. They completely bombed on all that, and then they added in the worst decade in the history of the conference in terms of football, so not being attractive.
And just, not only that, there was absolutely no substance / foresight here. I'll give you a perfect example. Yeah. When USC and UCLA went to when it was announced they were going to the Big Ten, you turn on the Big Ten network, they talked about that nonstop for weeks. I kid you not, when you turned on the Pac-12 network that day, it was rowing. I mean, that's the kind of stuff.
I mean, what would you have done?
well, I get it. But the thing about it, though, is that there's so many times where
do you like the like black and white pictures of John McKay with like a black sash across it or something?
Right. I mean,
I don't know what you do.
But there's just, I think from a fan perspective, it's just you don't have a lot of faith in these presidents to do the right thing. And like you said, too, a lot of these presidents still were here when the USC UCLA thing happened. And you, by your own admission, were not stunned by it because you read you read what Bone was saying. So,
yeah, I mean, I was surprised the day that it happened. I was surprised, but we knew that there was a lot of unhappiness.
Yeah, but
I am not going to be one of those people who lies and pretends like I somehow knew. Like,
right. No, exactly. But like you said, but you're still going with quotes from a USC president that said all options are on the table. These are the same presidents then that did not look at what you were looking at and are now the ones that are in charge of a media rights deal. And I think that terrifies people, to be honest with you.
Well, and the other thing too is these schools are very interrelated in a lot of ways. I mean, USC is the chair of the AAU.
Right.
The vice chair, by the way, is the chair of the Big Ten.
Right. Yes, I was going to say, right.
Let's remember that. And Cal is on there. So, I mean, you have all these kind of interrelated elements. I mean, when the interrelation too of presidents across conferenades is enormous. Like I said, with the changes in the Big Ten and the influence of the West Coast. One of the things that stunned me, so the lady who, again, she's leaving at the end of the year, but was the president of Ohio State, who did the Big Ten's press conference to announce USC and UCLA, has 3 degrees from Stanford and was on their varsity field hockey team.
Right.
So, and they asked her about, she gave by the way, and Dr. Johnson, I love you. You're amazing. But you gave the weirdest answer ever on when called out and asked about Stanford. And she was like, well, we're just going to do what's right for Ohio State student athletes. And it was a really strange answer. So There's a lot going on there as far as they go. The bigger question, for you guys, which I think they just need to get it done. And if they can't, then there's a bigger question. But one of the things that we have, again, are all 10 of them lying or not? They're in the rooms with those media consultants. They have the documents. They're seeing the proposals. They know what's going on.
What
They
what
also
happens?
don't leak, which is kind of nice.
What happens with Washington State and Oregon State if this thing all goes sideways? Do they end up in the Mountain West? What happens to those two schools? Because we get Oregon State and Washington State fans on here every single day. I will say they're very nervous about
the nuclear scenario.
Yes, exactly. Okay. What happens to them?
So the nuclear scenario, which again I do not think is realistic,
Right.
Like, let's say tomorrow the Big Ten said, you know what, let's leave the Ducks. The Big Ten says we're taking Notre Dame, Stanford, Cal, and Washington.
Right.
And then the Big 12 says we're taking Oregon and Arizona State and Arizona and Utah and Colorado, whatever. And you're left with, again, that nightmare scenario that I don't think is going to happen in the
We're talking theoretically. Right.
Theoretically, and you're left with like Oregon and Washington. So there's a thing, the Power Five is actually a fake media misnomer. It's actually the Autonomy Five, the A5. And those are the 5 conferences that have been granted autonomy powers by the NCAA. It's a really good thing to have.
Mm-hmm.
And Mike Oresco, when he writes these like manifestos about like his anger. He talks about this a little bit. But the Pac-12 is one of those. So in a nuclear scenario, the Pac-12 will do exactly what the Big 12 has done repeatedly, which is reach into the G5s and promote.
Right.
So, the sort of the nuclear scenario and that nuclear scenario, whatever it would be, maybe it's only a partially nuclear scenario, whatever it would be, whatever the number is that they have to reach into the Mountain West, into the American, into, wherever.
Maybe Oregon State and Washington State would actually be running things at that point.
It would be just like the Big 12. I mean, if you told people 15 years ago that the Big 12 was going to be run by Baylor and TCU and Oklahoma State, they would have laughed you out of the room.
Right.
But, that's who's left. So that's who's running things. So in that nuclear scenario, you would see a sort of a mass promotion with massive rippling effects. Now, the college football playoff, interestingly, I believe has already prepared for this.
Right.
So the thing about the college football playoff is it's now structured. The idea of the Autonomy Five, the 5 matter because they have special NCAA powers. But as far as the playoff is concerned, those days of the 5 conference benefits ends next year because starting next year, the automatic bids go to the top 6 finishing conferences, whoever they are.
Right.
So the college football playoff is already prepared for one or more conferences to go nuclear.
And there's going to be, like we talked about before, there's going to be another, in this 5-6 years, another massive blow up in college football or college athletics. It's going to change.
I think there'll be a massive disruption, but the question is, what will it be? Because one of the other things too is, and this is something that, and Greg Sankey's talked about this a lot. The Big Ten presidents have talked about this. Is that we've never had a conference be successful at this enormous size yet.
Right.
So when they talk about like the importance of like integrating USC and UCLA and doing it right, and USC just hired Sandy Barber as like a special helper to the athletic department, and the guy from Duke. I mean, they're bringing in the former commissioner of the Big 12 and deputy commissioner of the Pac-12 is now like a special USC advisor to the Big Ten integration. So I mean, these Big Ten and SEC first want to see, like, are we going to be creaky here at being too big? So I don't know if you guys remember when the WAC had 16 and it didn't work.
Yeah, for sure. It was too big. And you had too many random teams in there that just didn't make any sense. And
are you going to be in that situation again? Because everybody acts like this is a game of Risk or Monopoly, where like we're just going to take another property and let's I'll buy up yours and we'll all divide it up. And I see these people play these games on YouTube channels. They're like, oh, here's what will happen with the ACC. And they act like this is all. No, Boston College, if anything goes wrong with the ACC, Boston College is not going to have a home.
Right. And that's why I think, and again, kind of go back to that point where, wherever you look at it, having stability is an important factor here.
Well, and I'll tell you the other thing that is another, and people, I know like some of the football only fans get really mad at me when I say this, but the other thing is there are giant power structures within higher education. And if you can hold on to the coattails of Cal and Stanford, you're not going to be left behind in the power structures of higher education.
Right. For sure. 100%.
And so that's one of the other beneficiaries. Now, if you're with Central Florida and TCU and Baylor, you may well be left behind.
Right.
But as long as you are locked in with the monster mothership that is the University of California,
As long as they're not backstabbing you, though, Tony.
Well, that's why I said as long as you're holding on to those coattails. For example, we laugh about research money, but the entire Big 12 does like, I don't know, $2 and some billion worth of research. The University of California itself, and especially if you include the labs they have, does like 15.
Right.
So it's just another world of
academically, it's another world,
sure. But it's power. So one of the things, for example, when people talk a lot about shifts and changes, and are we going to split away from the NCAA and all that kind of stuff? I mean, they really need to be teaming up with the ACC schools and with the Ivy League schools and with the super powerful D3 schools, because those are the people that can tell the president of Ohio State, knock it off.
Right.
You know,
Tony,
that's who has the power.
Tony, this has been a blast, my man. We're going to have to do this again here.
Hey, anytime. We'd love to have you. We do during the season. We do a Pac-12 chat show on the Voice of College Football channel. We always have Arizona fans, and we would love to have you come chat about the Wildcats and the great things Coach Rich is doing.
You let me know, and I'll be there, dude.
Anytime. Go Cats.
All right. Yeah, absolutely.
Am I doing it right?
Go Cats. Love it right there. All right. We'll be back with you tomorrow. For Tony Altimore, I'm Mike Luke. Appreciate all the comments. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats podcast.